Welcome to Not This, Not That, where we push our boundaries of understanding and perception. I am your host, Reverend Patricia Caginello, and I invite you to join me as we open to the possibility that things may not be exactly as you believe, as you've been told, that there could be more, that in our collective consciousness is the potential for the all. You can find Not This, Not That on sacredstoriesmedia.com and on Apple Podcasts and all streaming services on the Sacred Stories podcast. Today, we are concluding our four-part series with New York Times bestselling author James Redfield to expand our boundaries of understanding on the 12 insights that comprise the Celestine vision. The first 9 insights are from James' best-selling book, The Celestine Prophecy, and the 10th, 11th, and 12th insights James will be discussing today. And they're from his follow-up books to the series, The 10th Insight, The Secrets of Shambhala, and the 12th Insight. So welcome back, James Redfield, to Not This, Not That.
Thank you. Nice to be with you again.
Yeah, absolutely. So James, our world has changed so dramatically since we began our series just a short 6 weeks ago. Can we begin our discussion today with you framing the overall message of the Celestine vision and how you see the principles and insights supporting humanity through our current reality?
Well, it's really interesting. Of course, the short answer is that consciousness, and that's what we're talking about. We're talking about stepping into a larger consciousness, which is our birthright, that brings in all the benefits that make life go easier, for the first thing, and also to be more inspired. So, the benefits of consciousness is really what the Celestine vision is all about, because in the short way to say this is that we're opening up to all of us, to humanity in general, to how the world really works. What is the nature of spiritual consciousness? Does it, if we tune into that higher consciousness, that again is something that our souls want to jump into, we move from insight into the world to the ability to be totally aligned, with why we're here, who we are, what can we open up to if we really move past our emotional fears and hurts and really step into a kind of miraculous flow in life. It doesn't mean we're not knocked out of that flow, but we're learning how to get back to it. So the Celestine vision really is making clear what we know about the spiritual dimension that we're in, how we can actualize our best dreams there, move past all our fears, and move into a flow that is our birthright. And these insights are just key understandings of how the world really works metaphysically. And then we're moving into the ability to stay aligned in a kind of flow toward our self-actualization, our discovering and then implementing our mission in this world, that really turns us on and keeps us at the greatest sort of consciousness and inspiration. So this is all just words until you really experience these understandings and move into this flow. But that's what we're talking about.
I think that's why the insights, the Celestine Prophecy and Vision have really resonated with people for decades now, because it is the experience. I mean, I have so many times people have said to me when, they've heard different spiritual constructs or advice, they'll say, but I don't know how to do that. How do I do that? And the insights are really tangible steps. They're real information that you can experience really immediately.
Yeah, and again, nothing about talking about spirituality is really real until you can actually prove to yourself that these experiences are real. And again, this comes from the findings of the human potential movement, right? And so what we're talking about is a whole movement of discovery in terms of how the world works from a spiritual point of view. It's no one religion. It's none of that. It's a series of experiences that we can prove to ourselves are waiting for us. Once we intend to move into that kind of flow. So never before have we been at this level of consciousness worldwide. And that means that we just are ready to implement this. Life doesn't have to be this hard. We're actually guided in life once we turn on to our intuitive intelligence. And that's a step. That's one of the insights. Mm-hmm. So what we do is grow into the ability to have all of this at our disposal. And again, nobody stays in this flow, this optimistic, inspired flow all the time. The trick is, how long does it take for you to bounce back into it again, keep it going?
Right, absolutely. And not to get discouraged, if your toe comes out of the water, to know that your whole foot is going back in soon. It's that coming back into flow.
That's right.
So today we're going to talk about the 10th, 11th, and 12th insight. James, how would you frame the 10th insight?
Well, let me just say one thought about all of them. There are 12 insights altogether. The first series, 1 through 3, is foundation. When we move from a materialistic outlook to more of one of spiritual consciousness. 4th, 5th, and 6th, they're all about implementing and discovering this experience of flow. 7th, 8th, and 9th is about really realizing how to get into this flow at fuller levels and keep it going most of the time, right? And then 10 and 11 and 12 are when we pop into that fuller consciousness. What happens is that we gain our greatest influence on others, and we clarify our missions, and we're pursuing our missions in life, and there's a sense of destiny that's unfolding. So that all happens in the 3 insights that we're going to be talking about. And I would just say, first of all, about the 10th. The 10th, I'll always say that I'm not making these up. These are, I'm describing almost like a journalist would a upward tick in human consciousness that begins with an insight and then is integrated into an ability of life. So when you have the 10th insight, and remember the first book came out, and my publisher, and it was first 9 insights, worldwide bestseller. So it carried a large wake. Many people wanted to study those, and at the time, my publisher, her attitude was, you got to have another book out next year. You got to feed the masses, and of course, what I said was, hey, this is about me discovering some expansion of consciousness, a big insight, a revelation, aha, happening in humanity, with humanity at the same time. And I've got to wait till I see some sign of it. So the 10th insight did get written after a few years, because I did identify, in my mind at least, a new insight that was coming in. And if you remember the early part of the 2000s, you realize that what's happening is that we discovered the afterlife. This this aha that came out of all the research and the publicity about near-death experiences. All these people that, on the operating table or just mystically had these experiences where they, you leave your body and you, just like in the course after, if you had died, these people, most of them were legitimately dead for a while. So off they went to the afterlife, right? And they experienced all these things. And then they came back and reported, they were resuscitated or sent back. And what happened was that they reported on what was going on in the afterlife. And this was a big, huge shift, because the 10th insight is when you realize that the afterlife is a real place. It's not some abstract sense of heaven, oh yeah, we'll go to heaven, but we don't want to think about it too much because we're too afraid of thoughts about our own death. We got to, keep that out of our minds, for Christ's sake. And that's what the expansion was. We suddenly began to understand that we come from an afterlife. We come into this life on a mission. And all this is, this was all research. All this was substantiated by the similarities with which people experience the afterlife. So we have a good idea of what the process is in terms of when we're born. We're born with a birth vision, something we want to happen, something we want to grow into, and some mission we want to perform. That's across all the testimony, or the majority of the testimony about the afterlife. And then we want to get something done, and then we, at some point, make the transition back to the afterlife, have a life review. How well do we do? So all that information, and people can study that, there's all those books are out there still. So I described it then as a new broadening of consciousness, because as Elizabeth Kubler-Ross showed, everybody tried to deny death. We were very repressed up until this time. And all of a sudden, we realized we could broaden our expansion to the full scope of life, which is to consider what we were thinking when we came, what happens to us when we go back, try to make people more comfortable in those transitions, which is slowly beginning to happen. So that's how we could keep our eyes open more. We weren't as repressed. We weren't chasing our coping devices, trying not to think about death. And we were healed and expanded in consciousness. And that's the 10th insight. Now, what's the ability? Okay. So we have that insight that's out there in the world. Any individual can start to ponder the afterlife and read, enough about it to realize that, hey, these are real. This is a real insight about life. Now, but what's the ability? How do you stay in that insight? And it's just that everything you do in life should have that as a kind of background reality. We're here on a mission. We get help from the afterlife, and I don't think that's actually so much comes from individuals or guides or anything like that. I think it's more it becomes a part of our intuitive intelligence generally, so that we get more stronger and more clarifying intuitions that then set us up, as we saw in the 7th insight, set us up to follow. And when we follow them, we we go to a place where then we're set up for a mysterious coincidence to happen to move our journey down the line. So anyway, that's the 10th. And I believe you could probably affirm the fact that we've gone through this awakening concerning the afterlife.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. You know what's so fascinating to me is the confirming, I guess, because what we're talking about, or what when people think of the afterlife, it's been very faith-based, a part of it for so long. And I think that's what, speaking of in the turn of this century, the ability for people to have these near death and come back, regular people, and to really speak about it and have it being able to be documented. And then being able to take it and take that information and be able to have it support us as we're expanding our consciousness here is just incredible. It's wonderful.
Yeah, and we're still making the transition out there. I mean, there are a lot of institutions, meaning government, big corporations, who don't really want all this awakening to happen, and they would prefer if we just kept our materialistic delusion about this world. That's synchronicity doesn't happen. We don't have an intuitive intelligence. We just occupy some work in the economy that other people control. And there's a stumbling block there, because these entities really want us to view transhumanism as the goal, where we declare that there's no meaning to life, and that the best we can hope for in terms of immortality is to put our consciousness in a computer or a robot. And if this sounds outlandish to you, let me say that there are departments in every university who have that as a goal, and it's a transhumanistic kind of world. Before they want to stay in the materialistic world, before we discovered the afterlife. That's the world they're holding on to, and there's fewer and fewer of them, but they have, unfortunately, a lot of power still in terms of shaping education and shaping what you see on television. So there's a kind of general clamp down against talking about consciousness, but it's again, that's not our enemy. Those people come across to the side of consciousness by the hundreds every time we have an open conversation about it, because again, higher consciousness is contagious, and people in a kind of repressed consciousness love to come over to the other side.
I love the conversation, where they talk about science and spirituality meet, right? And somewhere in the middle. And your conversation around the transhumanism movement and all that is happening, I on one hand, it is heavy technology and the creation of the perfect human, right? Is I believe, I've heard that term that people are using. And then the other side, there's the pure consciousness, and somewhere in the middle, and that is my impression of your work, James, and the human potential movement, right? Is being able to understand ourselves as consciousness, but also be supported, knowing that there's a science base to it, that this isn't just, nothingness that people are making up, but then being able to stand in that power and draw on our own power, knowing that strong foundation we can really work from.
Yeah, I agree with you totally. When spirituality in general, spiritual consciousness in the broadest sense, had their own proponents in the world of science and logic and open discussion, and a meaningful drive toward a consensus about consciousness. That's science. I mean, the physicists wouldn't call it science because there's not a mathematical formula at the basis of it, but there probably could be. But we're moving too fast for that. What we're proving to ourselves with this kind of new science about what is available to us, how the world really works, is a kind of trans-religious discussion. So all of these scientific breakthroughs and discussions really help all of the existing religions to move to their best message and talk about consciousness and the actual experience of spirituality rather than just dogma. And that's an opening and a kind of free discussion that only helps everything.
And it opens us to the 11th insight, which has been described, as the power of prayer. Can you talk about that? Well,
these insights always are a step up in consciousness, right? And activate parts of our souls and parts of our brains. It can be seen as a firing up of part of the brain. But the 11th insight, I knew it was a new insight when suddenly we started to look at prayer scientifically. Dr. Larry Dossey was the first one to do that, study the science of prayer. Does it really work? The powers that be were skeptical and put forth some studies that were obviously fraudulent. But the good research about prayer is that it absolutely works. And it's been quite a bit of research on prayer and its helpfulness in illness, for instance. But really the insight is about the power of intention. Because if you look at prayer, you realize that the power of prayer resonates in belief and in a kind of faithfulness. If you look at the religious texts about it, it's always a matter of faith, right? If you have enough faith, then you can move mountains, right? And so, this discussion really is about, well, how much power do we have, and what's going on? If you look at the current research on prayer, you see that the most effective prayer, as in terms of outcome, you're praying for a certain outcome, and it is the strongest prayer. It's not what might be called a beseechment, where you say, please God, if it's okay, I'd really, if this is in the great design of things, or however you might express that, could I be healed of this illness? Well, that works. It's been proved to work. That works. But the most powerful prayer is an affirmation. And affirmation is a prayer that modeled, let's say, on the Lord's Prayer. It doesn't say, please God, if you don't mind, could you give us our daily bread, right? That's not the model that was given. The model is an assertion. Give us our daily bread. So what counts in that is the expectation power in an affirmation. You don't just ask for it. You affirm that it will be given. Now, that's sort of the way intention works in this dimension, I believe. And the research has been done on that. And if it's expressed as an affirmation, then it is the most powerful. And there's another element that is most powerful, and that is if you are grateful in this affirmation. And the way that works is if you can feel gratitude, In other words, your faith is so that you completely believe that you're going to get this, the answer to this intention or prayer, that you are grateful for it already. And there's always a question, well, how do you get your faith up? Well, the strongest builder of faith and belief is gratitude. After all, you're assuming it's already happened. So you're already receiving it. And you hold that gratitude, and it has to be the real emotion of gratitude, right? It's not just a head thing. It's not just an idea. It's not just mental. You have to really feel it. And we all know gratitude. We've had gratitude before, right? We felt that. It's a particular emotion, and it's kin to love. It's right on that same heart-opening love place, because you're connecting with the divine love behind this universe, and that force we've always called God. And you find that expression of gratitude, and the anecdotal evidence that I've seen is pretty good, that adding gratitude emotionally, it's real. You'll see a lot of people who are, even if they just are using modern physics, that something about gratitude really does bring to you the vision of what you want to happen.
And James, it goes, two points that come up for me. One is that this goes back to the eighth insight, right? The experience of feeling the energy and then sharing it, right? So it's not a mental exercise, it's the actual experience of it. And the experience that, you have said even that the world is now ready for sustained consciousness. And we got here, not by accident, but we got here by the collective conscious thought, right? The focus, the actions we've taken over the past decades, as a collective, if that makes sense. So
absolutely.
Right. So having it be that the affirming, that collective affirmation of conscious positive thought is so powerful. It is so powerful. I know that I framed it as the power of prayer, but isn't that what prayer is? It is that conscious thought, and again, one step further. And I love how you brought the Lord's Prayer for those of the Christian faith in it, because yes, I learned that as a young girl. I don't know, I've probably said it thousands of times growing up, and I never looked at it as an affirmation instead of an ask. That is so insightful.
It's interesting too that our we can, if we go back, just in the early 2000s, when this insight came in, there was just so much talk, not just about the research, but about the practice of it. And we had lots of, it was probably 2006, the Celestine Prophecy movie was released, and that had a lot of talk about the afterlife and talk about prayer, but what happened was that it all wasn't perfect. The Secret came out, if you remember, and the Secret wasn't perfect. The law of attraction is a principle, but it's a principle that works when you're in spiritual connection. And if you're just an ego and you just want to, put that pink Cadillac on your window, and you put, that's all you want is a pink Cadillac. You think about it all the time. You're probably going to get the pink Cadillac. There's no doubt about it. But what comes with it is you know, a wake up call. And very often, you know, our best dreams, if they're materialistic and superficial, they come with a wake up call. They'll either just work enough to get you going, or they'll turn around and present you with an existential dilemma of some kind that is there to wake you up to spiritual connection. But then once you're in spiritual connection, once you get the fifth insight and can that ability to come back and tune in, you know, make sure you have enough time in contemplation where you're just listening, you know, and you let everything go during that practice of the meditation, and you're seeking the love opening, the peace that surpasses all understanding. You do all that, then you get your karma. Remember, we have to go all the way back to the third ability, the ability to stay in a giving mode all the time, and that you don't cut corners in life. You don't put the foot over into the dark side and start to manipulate or control people, or all the things that we can slip into unconsciously. But if you stay on the light side, then what happens is your intention power here at Insight 11 then goes up. You know, I remember listening to a TV evangelist, actually, Kenneth Copeland. And Kenneth Copeland was saying, look, God is not going to turn the power up in you if you have the capability of, you know, blowing out tires on the freeway because somebody cut you off. You know, you have got to be on the, you know, you have to, the power of intention is based on the power of spiritual connection and karmic giving. All this, everything in this universe revolves around giving. We're here to give our message to the world. We're here to help everybody that crosses our path. We're here to give synchronicities, not just look for them in other people. And we're here to uplift consciousness by projecting, like we talked about in the eighth. So the intention power has gone up as consciousness has gone up. But as individuals, we have to get clear of all the controlling and the manipulation we do to make ourselves feel good or to sustain our coping devices, you know, and break through to spiritual connection. And because that's where the fun is. And once you can also add your intention to the flow of synchronicity in your life, that's when it expands your influence in the world. So that's why the 10th and 11th are about expanding our influence in the world. And that's when life becomes dreamy and doors open up for your greatest, not about being famous, your greatest impact in the world, you know, with individuals in the world.
And the 11th insight, which you've been sharing, is from your book, The Secrets of Shambhala, or shared in great detail in The Secrets of Shambhala. And the 12th insight, which kind of brings them all together, it's the integration insight, is explained and shared in your book titled The 12th Insight. So James, can you kind of pull this all together for us?
Absolutely.
12.
Absolutely. The integration is not, you know, you don't have to, you know, go through life and you run into something that you know is not right in some interaction or something that people are saying, and you don't have to say, okay, now what insight was that I was supposed to learn? You know, you don't have. That's not what it's about. It's just living your life a little differently. In other words, you integrate the truth in terms of how you react to the world of each insight. And that's what I mean about reaching ability to live this without having to think about it. All you have to do is make sure that you realize synchronicity is the engine of destiny. And so if you think you could just sit in the corner or in your study and ponder the spiritual nature of the universe and do nothing else, you're just going to go in circles, you know, because it's not a mental thing. This is an experiential thing. And it begins with these mysterious synchronicities. So that's the engine. And then it's about waking up in the morning, not like you did when you were 7. Wake up in the morning, not the way you did last year, but to wake up in the morning ready for this flow of life, to solve all your problems, clarify your dream, and then manifest your dream. That's what synchronicity does. But we just have to stay in the flow of it. So, the first one to think about is the flow of synchronicity. And that early in the morning, you ask, what's up for me? What is my basic question about anything? It could be a problem to be solved. It could be something about our missions that we want to create or just get clarity about. And whatever it is, it could be very practical, down to earth, something you could write on the list, but you don't try to do it, solve it, or get there with your intellect. You're trying to get there by allowing yourself to be guided. And here's how that works. You wake up in the morning, you find your question, okay? Every morning, make sure it might be the same question, but identify what's up and what are your inspirations, okay? And then you go into an alertness, okay? Now, alertness is a zone. If you ever played golf or sports, and you all of a sudden it's kind of automatic and your body is performing, you don't even have to think about it, you're just in the flow. It's similar to that. It's a flow of life. So what happens is that you make sure, so that you have your question, you make sure you go into this kind of alert zone where you're expecting to have some movement on that question, right? So you're really waiting for the first synchronicity to occur, but you're also waiting for something else. You're waiting for an intuitive hunch of something you can do right away to pursue that question. And that's, you do that very quickly, as you get out of bed. I sometimes just kind of get in that dozy stage, in and out of sleep, and do it then. But you'll get an intuition of what you should do today. Call that old friend, research something on the computer, go to some location, library, bookstore. You'll get a hit of what to do. So you're allowing yourself to be guided, and you try to do that all the time. Just make sure you're given enough alertness to the thoughts that are coming that feel inspired a little bit, or helping you. It could be something ordinary. Now, don't think it has to be a new book to change your life. It could be anything to do. It may be very practical, but you wind up having a synchronicity at the end. So you're expecting an intuitive guidance that will lead to a synchronicity. And then all you have to do at that point is then make sure you're in alignment with how things work in this universe. And the main one is that you have to stay in the giving zone, not a taking zone, because the more you give, the more you attract people into your life to give to you. And that's and then there's the opposite. If you take, even if it's unconscious, so at some level, you shouldn't be trying to dominate this person to get attention. And, there's kind of violation of conscience there. But when you stay on the light side, stay in the giving, so all the motivations will shift to giving, not taking. So all the thoughts you get, all the intuitions that you get will be about how to give your truth in the world in some better way that seems to be unfolding in destiny. Again, this is right at the, before the conversation with your grandchild. You know what I mean? It's not about being acknowledged. In fact, it absolutely has to not be about being acknowledged. So you're just giving your truth, and that evolves. So you're in the flow now. Now you're on the right side of karma. So you're out of bed and out of the house. And the other thing that is to watch out for the actions of others or situations that knock you out of this flow and make you feel defensive. Okay, so defensiveness makes us want. I mean, we count in the world. You know, they'll try to put me down. That whatever we do that gets our power back against people we think are trying to lower our power, that is a power struggle. So that has to be let go of, just like you're still in your meditation, and move in all the ways that we keep ourselves out of control dramas. And those are reactions you have to learn about the fourth insight, and those are out there. Those are the hardest reaction patterns to change, but we can do it. We can do it. What do? We give energy. So that's the final thing as we kind of walk out the door. We have to be not just givers of information, but givers of energy. And what are we giving? Well, we're letting energy, inspiration energy, that level of consciousness flow into us. That keeps us at that level of consciousness. And then we overflow it on another person. And we seek to see the expression of higher consciousness on that person. Okay, that's the eighth insight. Okay, so we're already moving through these as a matter of training of how we react. Somebody we feel our energy going down because someone's seeking power over us or whatever they might be doing. Forget about that. You just give energy. And that fills you up, keeps you in the flow, and does the best to help the other person. Now, the other key factor, and that is that giving of energy that keeps our greatest influence up. Because if we're giving energy on the positive side of life, helping others, then our consciousness goes up even more, and we can have very powerful intentions because we're not doing anything selfish with that intention. We're doing something that's to enlarge the good that we are giving out there, and then we're almost totally in this the true power we're supposed to have in the world. And all we have to then become conscious of is any intuitions that feel like they come from the afterlife, because we have people helping us over there. Okay, mainly departed loved ones, but other, and just the only thing to worry about is whether it's a positive injunction or a positive suggestion of something we should do. And because we're a giver, we always calculate, is this on the side of giving to doing the best possible good in the world? We don't do anything or collaborate with anybody that is doing less than that. And that is the flow. And what we will do as our power increases, this power of good is becoming more and more influential. We can implement this eighth insight fully, and have an auric expression of ourselves that goes into buildings before we go in, or comes through us if we talk on the radio or YouTube channel, all the other things that people like to do now and get inspiration from doing. You can just see the influence in terms of just inspiration energy, all right, that's divinely inspired. As long as those are the parameters you want in your life flow, it will change your life completely. because you're allowing yourself to be guided into this best mission for you. And all you'll get deja vu because you wanted that so much before you came.
The beauty of everything you're talking about, James, and I've said it in our previous interviews, but it's just so striking to hear you, bringing it all together this way, is that it's something that everyone can do, regardless of their education or economic background or religious or spiritual study. It is truly the human potential, and we talked about the human potential movement earlier, but that's really the essence of everything you're talking about. It's the human potential and available to all humans. And that's why, I think that is why the Celestine Prophecy and the 12 insights have changed lives around the world for decades.
Yeah, it's what we do is we recognize the conclusions, this new consensus of how the world really works. And that's something that we know already. So I think the reason the books were pass along books and let's talk about this with a friend, that's all about the fact that we're wired to pop into this. And when we talk about, ascension or all these little things we talk about all the time, this is the only mechanism that could possibly get us there, right? We have to first embody this consciousness. You can't it can't be just mental, but it's the greatest life you could possibly have. And what happens is it builds slowly enough so that you just feel like you suddenly have self-confidence where once you didn't, and you know what to say to other people to uplift them, and to avoid power struggles, and to look for higher consciousness in the other person when you talk to them. Those things empower us in the most positive way, and it only comes from the energy from the divine source. Divine love has to be an emotional love, or you don't know where it's coming from. And but that's a clear choice. You're coming from divine love. You're absolutely on the part of good, and you can grow into the greatest life you could possibly have. And you'll always hit roadblocks. You'll wake up in the morning and you're afraid about some sudden happening like this pandemic. But the key is how much do you meditate already? How much have you been building up this peace that surpasses all understanding, this love opening that is our birthright? So, it takes some work to get your sea legs here, but it's like skiing. Once you learn it and start to manifest it every day, going and waking up in the morning, going out your door, then it's suddenly a flow and you can get right back into the flow.
Reminds me of what I would tell my kids, when they were little and everyone was talking about stranger danger and so forth. And I said, I would always tell them, be smart, not scared. Know your safety rules, know how to navigate, but don't be afraid of it, right? So be smart, not scared. And that's what's coming to me as we're kind of wrapping up our discussion on the 12 insights today, is that this is, a framework, and it can help you when applied and with intention, as you say, through experiencing them. It can help us move out of the fear, this crazy fear that's, permeating this world on so many levels today, and keep our footing, keep our solid footing as we continue to move forward in a sustained higher consciousness.
That's right. And the more you can give, the better. And tithing is a way to give, start with 1%, start with 0.5%, and get into the fun of waiting for an intuitive direction for what you should do with that money. Now I can just tell you, that's one of the most fun things I've ever established in my life. And it's immediately purposeful. I mean, you're waiting to see where to give this money, and it always comes up. Something will always happen to show you what to do with that money. Just start very small. It's okay. None of us, especially now, have a lot of money to give away, but that's okay. Just give a little bit. But to start that mechanism, because you'll see changes happening and people giving to you, not money necessarily, but help. It just gets that flow of help coming to you faster. And again, this is something that transcends all religions. And some religions say, well, just give to our church, or does it count? Well, I think you can prove to yourself that that's not the case. And you may want to, though. That might be exactly where you're supposed to give, but that'll be an intuitive thing that comes, and you just have to keep your ego out of it. But it's just great. And then I think let's look forward into the future. What if everybody were doing this? What if everybody was giving at this level and living this fulfilling kind of life? The world would change very quickly. We could solve every problem humanity has. All the pollution, all the undereducation, and all the hunger, and everything. And it again is when you come to ascension, that's the enough of us doing this is when the ascension is going to happen, not before. A lot of religions will say, well, God, we're waiting on God to ascend us. Well, I would argue that God is waiting on us. This creative stream that are giving us all these experiences. No, we don't understand fully why this was set up, but we do know, in my view, the operating manual for this dimension, and it's not that complicated.
It's not complicated, and it's the hallmark of the Celestine vision, conscious, tangible action, right? Experiences. I'm just going to wrap up with, I encourage everyone, right? I mean, if you're not sure what action to take, then commit to a practice of tithing, which is giving to others, which is giving. Typically it would be financial, but I think we could even broaden that, right, James? We can broaden it to any sort of giving. But the tithing in a financial way, it also helps because, like you say, it's very measurable. It's something you can see, you can really see results. And sometimes that's a great place to start, right?
That's right. And listen, get somewhere to talk about all this. I on Celestine Vision, we're seeking to establish. It's not quite ready yet, but it's by the I think late April, maybe even early May, we're really going to have an active community. Where you can come in and talk about these things and talk about them at the level of where you are. If you're having trouble with your romantic partner, how do the insights apply to that? How do living spiritually apply to how to handle these kind of things? I mean, this is a level we have to understand that it improves lives. It's just not about abstract visions of the future. It's about immediately improving your life. And so the community that we envision is a place to talk about this stuff and to seek companionship of thought and support, and that's what's going to the more people talking about it, the more it's going to be something that people can see as real in their lives and something that they want to go do. Because if more and more people move into walking this kind of walk, in life, this journey, it catches on, and it's, something that can be expanded person to person, energy to energy, and that's what will solve all our problems. It's that level of moving into your own power and your own sense of message that helps the world.
The website, James's website, is celestinevision.com, and we've been speaking to James Redfield, best-selling author of The Celestine Prophecy, The 10th Insight, The Secret of Shambhala, and The 12th Insight. James, you've shared so much across this interview series. I feel almost, bad, but I'm going to do it anyway, asking you for, just a final thought, just a final intention or wish or thought for our listening audience as they really are going out in their day and navigating our current world.
Well, if you'll just become a giver of some of your income, and if you'll give energy, that alone will move you into this consciousness. All the other things will fall into place as you read about them, but it's giving energy to others. It elevates our consciousness. All we have to do is intend to do it. We're intending to see higher conscious on the other person, not how to compete with them, how to show them up, how to get money from them, but just giving energy and looking for expression of higher consciousness while you're talking about the weather or whatever you're talking about. You can make a difference in another person's life, and you keep yourself more energetic and open to the kind of consciousness we're talking about.
James Redfield, thank you so much for joining us today for Not This, Not That.
No, as I said to you personally, I love the work you're doing, and it's very, very important. And it's my pleasure to be with you. Thank
you. And listeners, I encourage you to go to CelestineVision.com, and I encourage you to participate on CelestineVision.com, and also participate in life, in conscious thought, in conscious action, in practicing in experiencing the insights. They say that, half the battle is showing up, and every one of us has the opportunity and the capacity to show up in whatever way we can. And so I encourage you, because we need you. We need you. We need all of us together. So thank you for listening. Again, this was the concluding episode or concluding interview with James Redfield, best-selling author of The Celestine Prophecy, on all 12 insights. And if you haven't listened to the previous interviews, I encourage you to go back and listen, because James just shares a wealth of knowledge and real tangible tools and practices that can help you, in your everyday. So thank you again. My name is Reverend Patricia Caginello, and you have been listening to Not This, Not That.